Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Discussions in Education. It has been a while. Um, hmm, Lots happened in a bit. Once again, this is Tony Alberts, and today's topic is kind of everything that's going on out there. Um, Talked about Trump a lot in my last episodes, but I guess I'll just take this. This is a monologue episode. I'm alone here. I'll just take this chance to kind of update you on what's going on as far as myself. Currently, I'm in a administrative program, learning how to be an educational leader, which is surprisingly good. Really like the discussions. Met a lot of great people, and looking forward to talking with them in years to come as kind of move upwards or wherever I might move in education. I'm also taking on a new role in my district, trying to help them with a program to recover money from kids who are absent. Not like harassing those kids, but there's a program where they can come to a Saturday school, and the district recoups the loss that they had received financially. I'm in the San Jose area, so a lot of our school districts are actually losing enrollment. Part of it is just the number of charters and private schools that are coming up. But honestly, the biggest part right now is we're losing a lot of kids because just the housing prices in the area are insane. I know that often in education we talk a lot about teacher pay and how teachers aren't able to live by where they work and how they can't be a part of the community because of that. But at this point, the community in San Jose can't even really be part of it anymore either. Especially in some of the lower income districts, just because the amount of money that's flowing into the area, the amount of housing demand we have the Apple campus here, and they're opening up a second campus that's larger, will house more people. Google in Mountain View is also expanding. They're putting in a BART extension, which is our local area transit, and that's going to cause a lot more people to want to live in this area as it tends to be cheaper than where the tech companies are. So a lot of interesting things are going on as far as education. Statewide, we've got a lot of standards coming out and a lot of new standards and a lot of new pushes, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen federally. We're not sure if Trump's ban or Trump's desire to block funding to sanctuary cities is going to include education. So if, for example, San Francisco is a sanctuary city, does that mean the San Francisco school districts will not receive money as well? How is that going to be? How's that going to affect everything? There's just a lot of stuff up in the air right now. Yeah, it's a little scary as an educator, honestly. And I know last time we were talking, it. It's getting harder and harder for me personally to clamp down on behavior with my students. This year, around the district, our middle schools are having a real hard time as far as just student behavior, just the things they're trying to get away with, the things they're doing. We also, tied to that, we've had a lot of teacher turnover as well this year, which is a little unusual for Oak Grove. They're usually tend to be a little steadier than that. Which is unfortunate for this year. Steadiness is good as far as teacher employment is concerned. But no, we've been struggling a lot with it. And I from what I hear from other districts, there's some similar problems going on there as well. So it's kind of like a bubble of kids who are having a hard time locally, kind of moving up through their grades. And so I mean, a lot of it has come to pointing out Trump. Now, I teach a lot of poor black and brown kids. I mean, quite honestly, and I've got some poor white kids there, poor Asian kids. The big demographic, middle class to lower income, honestly, but they're all across the board as far as it goes. I don't think we have any who are maybe one or two students who might be considered affluent, but even then, compared to when I was teaching in Mountain View, and the kids there would tell me about their summers. I don't think any of our kids have a background that even mirrors the upper crust of Mountain View as far as it goes economically. Um, Upper crust, what an interesting term. Anyway, so so I've been really struggling as far as it goes, just because I keep trying to tell them that everything they tell me they dislike about the president, how he targets minorities and they feel like they're targeted and their families might be targeted, and he just says whatever he wants and he makes outrageous claims and he seems to be attacking them. I really try to point out that how a lot of their comments sometimes mirror how he approaches people in difficult situations. Um, I've been having conversations with, so I teach a study skills class, and those kids are the ones who either need some more time to finish work. They might have an IEP or a 504 that requires it, or they're kids who academically have been struggling a lot, and they are put in that class with the hope that I would teach them some skills. We had a lot of fluctuating numbers at the beginning of this year, and I had a lot of kids in there, so it became more of just like a study hall. It's not the actual intent, but that's what it has become, unfortunately. But I've been talking with them all week, and pretty much most of the conversations go the following direction. So-and-so said something about me. I can't stand for that. My reputation can't stand for that. I have to respond. I have to do something. And there's quite a few kids in that class who've gotten suspended for fights and stuff like that. And I just, I questioned them. I said, what do you actually gain from it? Like, do you care about what these people think? Do you care about what this other person actually says? 9 times out of 10, they say, no, I don't care about that person. They don't mean anything to me. But they're worried about their reputation as far as the larger community. And I understand that. I remember that growing up, but at the same time, I'm trying to get them to think past where I was, past where, my brother was, past where a lot of us were, past where a lot of my friends were. Like, I want them to be better than I was, and so I really do have these high expectations for these kids, and I'm trying to get them to realize that, if it's not your friends or family saying anything, and they understand where you are and what you stand for, then it really doesn't matter that some other group randomly somewhere else, especially a group that you already consider to be weaker, like what they say. But, they still get riled up. They still get angry about it. That's one approach that I'm taking. And then the other approach is, my classic approach is like, how much power do you want to give to somebody else? Because if they can say something to you that motivates a response from you that you don't really want to do, but you feel forced to, or you feel requires a response, and then you don't like the repercussions, like you don't really want to deal with the repercussions, like essentially if someone's making you do something you don't want, and you're bowing to that, that's power for them. That does mean they have power over you. And, both arguments, some of the kids sometimes get it. Some of them are starting to calm down a little. Some of them are talking more. But, just a lot of it is just trying to figure out where they're at. I decided that I would spend a couple days from now on, like just talking with the kids at the end of class. They will get the work done, and then I'll just sit there and talk and see what's going on with their lives. And I've got a instructional aide in there as well, or teacher assistant, and she's super helpful. Talks with them, and she gets really offended by their language sometimes. But in this instance, I'm less in these discussions. If you came in my room, or if a principal or an AP came in that room at any point during those discussions, they definitely might be offended at times, and they might say, Mr. Alberts, you should be possibly sending these kids to the office for some of the things they say. But in this instance, I really am trying to create a space where they can communicate how they communicate, but so that I can help them start thinking about their actions. without, and then their thoughts and the way that they're approaching situations without that constant condemnation of like, well, that's not how you should be expressing yourself. So I mean, a lot of these kids are used to being braggadocious about it, really throwing everything out there and just talking trash and standing up for themselves in that effect, or standing up for their friends in that manner. But at the same time, they're starting slowly to express their feelings behind why they're doing this stuff. And that I appreciate. That's what I want to hear. And I feel like if I were cutting them off there, how much conversation would be halted because of that? If that's my focus. If my focus is on your language as opposed to what you're expressing with your language, how much discussion does that halt? Especially in a more laid-back academic environment. And that actually brings me to kind of like tying it into as far as educational leadership goes. I'm really curious about how I'm going to approach this situation when I move up. If I become an assistant principal, if I become a principal at a school, how do you approach it with the staff? Because it is a requirement of the school and of the schooling system in the United States to teach kids the appropriate academic vocabulary that they'll need to be able to be successful in a vast majority of jobs and businesses and schooling as they grow up. But at the same time, how much of their personal voice is cut out when you focus on language? And at the same time, that doesn't mean allowing every single thing to be said. I mean, that's another thing I've been working with another one of my classes, which is really getting them to focus on. On Friday, I made very clear the one thing, if you completely ignore the classwork, which I don't want you to do because it's setting you up for high school, but if you ignore the academics, the one actual lesson I really want them to take away is to consider their words before they speak. Consider how those words will have an impact on others. And then if they are okay with the impact those words will have, then to fully accept the consequences. Because I feel a lot of the times now, these kids that I'm dealing with throw out words that, maybe they hear them online, they hear them from their friends, definitely, probably their parents as well. They're throwing out words without thinking, like the N-word, slurs for gay people, slurs for just anything. I mean, they throw out slurs like it's nobody's business. I mean, if we want to talk about racism, if you recorded the conversations they have, it sounds like just the most hateful, ignorant people sitting in a circle just yelling stuff at each other. And this isn't daily. I'm talking about like when you're walking around the yard or when they're getting into their actual arguments about like random stupid things. But just the words they use just have a lot of weight and background around them. And they're not taking it personally because, that's how they say, well, that's how I communicate with these friends. But other kids in the class hearing these words, other kids out on the blacktop hearing these words are hearing those words and taking them personally. I actually had two really brave groups this week in class. We were doing presentations on different civil rights leaders, rebels, revolutionaries throughout history, focused on America. And at the end of two of the presentations, which were about, one was about Marsha Johnson, and the other one was about Ina Ayola. I think I got that name right. I apologize if I got it wrong. But both of them are LGBTQ leaders and activists. One was the person who started, really was one of the people behind the Stonewall riots, kind of that first, I would say, collective action on the community to fight back against the harassment that they were receiving from New York cops. And then the second is an activist, I believe she said in Arizona or Texas. But at the end of the presentations, each group made really clear, because one question that I had for them was, were these people successful And both presentations said yes and no. Yes, because gay marriage is legal now. It is generally seen to be okay to love who you want to love, as long as they're another consenting adult. That is generally not looked down upon in the American public. But at the same time, they pointed out that they also weren't successful because they still hear hateful words every day. They still are surrounded by people, whether it's them personally or their uncles or their aunts or their moms, dads, cousins, brothers, sisters, whatever it might be. They're surrounded by people who do hold hateful feelings towards people who love the people they love. And each group, I was very impressed by this. Each group also made the very clear point that while they hear these things, while they are dealing with these things, they're strong people and they can overcome it. But it is a sign that progress still needs to be made. And I attempted to bring that up in the Friday discussion, and some of it got through and some of it did not. But at the same time, I also brought up the fact that this is a 60% majority Latino school. And I pointed out to them, I was like, you guys use the N-word every day. Like, hardcore all the time. Both as an insult and a compliment and as a greeting. It's filled. It's like the filler word for them. It has become this generation, at least in this class, they're hella. When I was growing up, hella was the word that we all used, and the N word has become that for them. And I had to ask. I was like, listen, this is why I'm asking you guys to think about the things you say and be okay with that consequence. Because if you're throwing that word out there, and you turn around, and there is a black man standing behind you who is highly offended by that, what are you going to do? And I didn't even bring up the fact that, forget if it's a black man. Like, forget about an adult that you might actually be fearful of, who may or may not do violence upon you because of the hateful words that you're saying freely amongst each other as if they don't matter. But, and this is what I really should have brought up. What if it's a black kid? What if it's a young little girl or little boy, and they just hear you throwing those words out there like nothing? What does that tell them about them? I'm not talking, the younger kids, younger black kids, younger kids of all ethnicities, white, Asian, what, they don't have those hateful words in their vocabulary yet. They don't know what those means. But by the time they get to school, they start learning those words. And definitely by the time they're third or fourth graders, that's still a little kid. But a third or fourth grader will generally know what words are the bad words. So what does that tell them when you're just throwing this very hateful word? I also told them, I am not a proponent of forbidden words. I'm not saying that you shouldn't say that word. And I'm not going to say it because I've got friends who've expressed to me, this is how that word makes me feel. I prefer not hearing it. And I love those friends, so I don't use that word. But I was trying to get to them and trying to get them to think, listen, if you're going to say that word, if you're going to use that word regularly, then be okay with how I perceive you. If I think of you as a racist when you use that word, be comfortable with that. Okay? Because even though that might not be the intention that you have, that is the impression that I get when someone throws that word around like it's nothing. And I'm not talking about singing along with the song. I hear kids singing along with the music all the time. Do I want to hear them say that word? No, but do I think hateful thing? Do I say oh, you know what, you're you're a bad person for that? I'm gonna say no. I know some people, and I know some of my friends would draw a much harder line as far as that goes. But for me, I'm well, you are singing along with the music. You're not yelling at anybody. You're just, whatever. You're zoning out. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of different opinions on that. But when you are in a conversation with your friends, those people around you, your family, whatever it might be, and you're using that word for, like I said, reasons of greeting, reasons of hate, reasons of dislike, reasons to push someone down and make them feel less. Or, and then as a goodbye. Like, it's confusing, but it's also, that is hateful. That is hate speech. Okay? Now, again, do I stand on the end where it says, well, that's hate speech, and so, there should be consequences for you, and you should, go to jail, blah, blah. No, I think in this instance, you should be comfortable with social consequences. If you throw that word around freely, understand that I have a low opinion of you. And if you are comfortable with that, then that's fine. But don't wuss out on it. I mean, that's what I see a lot. When I call kids on it and I say, hey man, when you say that, I think you are someone who is hateful. And I hate to be honest, I definitely, with the kids who really, really hate Trump, but then use slurs all the time, I say, you sound like Trump. Because he will use words to inflame people around him to get a reaction that he wants, doesn't care about the consequences necessarily of those words on whatever group that might hurt. I mean, be comfortable with that then. Embrace that. Understand who you are and say, Mr. Alberts, you may have that opinion, but for me, I don't care about that. And I'm not, that's not my job to harass you, but it is my job to make sure you understand how your behavior and your actions and your words impact those around you and impact society. That is definitely a part of my job. Not as much as your parents. Your parents, that's a huge part of their job, along with making sure you're healthy and well, or your guardians, or whoever you might have. But for myself, besides the content, I feel that that is the social aspect of making sure that you grow up to be someone that I enjoy sharing the society with. I feel like that's a major part of my job. And I think most teachers would too. I honestly feel most teachers believe that it's our job to make sure we produce good citizens for this country. And that doesn't mean kowtowing to everything I say. I'm okay with dissent. Very few teachers are. But if you got an argument behind it and you have reasons, share it with me all day. If you're just disagreeing with me to disagree, understand that I'm going to question you constantly. And this is how I'm approaching this as a teacher. So I'm really curious how I'm going to approach this as an educational leader. Because with adults, they know a lot more about the system. How much of an honest conversation can I have with an adult? How much will I have to watch myself, the words that I say? How much of my job will be at stake for how I approach these situations? I mean, now obviously it's a lot easier too, because there are very clear consequences and clear expectations and behavior for teachers as adults, or anyone at a school site as an adult. If I was walking around and I heard a teacher using that term freely to refer to students or other members of the staff, if I heard them throwing out the N-word like nothing, that would be an offense that I could write them up for. It's pretty clear as far as it goes. But at the same time, how do you get people beyond that? And that's what I'm still struggling with students. I'm still struggling every day with students and trying to figure out how I'm going to move them forward. And then how do you move adults forward? And how do you move society forward? Again, like, are laws banning stuff a good or a bad thing? I did hear... I think this was a Martin Luther King Jr. quote. I'm not 100% sure on it. But that you can't legislate away hate, but you can legislate so that hate cannot be, done upon others. And I think, that's, I brutalized that. I apologize. I'm pretty sure I'm getting that aspect wrong. But If this was correctly somewhat attributed to Martin Luther King Jr., the point there was that everyone out there might have issues with how the civil rights movement makes its role of applying laws and restricting this or making this illegal and bringing it up to the Supreme Court and having them make a decision. But honestly, that has been necessary in our past. I mean, we forget, and by we, I mean a vast majority of Americans forget that the reason they had to go through the courts and the reason they had to bring it up through the different levels in order to get laws put on the books through these courts was because the legislature itself, largely white, largely male, largely wealthy. Like, let's be clear about that. And that's been a constant through our history. That's not a... I mean, if we go back to the founding of this nation, those were the legislators, right? Land-owning, wealthy males, white males, who had some connection to government were in charge. And that has maintained its consistency. And they have, even the liberal ones throughout history, they have, by and large, been ones who appreciate the status quo, as that will not shake the country. They know the results of the status quo, and they are comfortable with dealing with those results. Right? When the ACLU and other civil rights organizations came along and started pushing black rights and gay rights, women's rights through the courts, Latino rights, minority rights in general, through the courts, that's what was necessary, because the Congress and sometimes occasionally the executive branch did not want to change. So when I hear people saying like, oh, well, why won't these people go through the regular channels? Why don't they just vote to change the law? Well, guess what? America, you're still a majority white. Right now. You still are. And, I mean, that's... if you ignore that, then you are blind. You are. There's no other way to put that. You have the power still. By and large, the power lies in your hands. By far, you have the most power. Now, does that mean that other groups of people aren't coming into power or are in power? I mean, yes, obviously. But to deny the fact that there is one group that holds sway politically in this country is ignoring the truth. And realize that that group doesn't want those laws. They've made bizarre maps of districts in states. I mean, I think we all agree that politicians, by and large, have proven to be, unfortunately, corrupt. And I know that was a large push for why Trump got into the office, because a lot of people felt that Clinton, myself included, very, very corrupt and tied to a lot of moneyed interest. I did not vote for Trump, but I mean, that was a legitimate concern for them, and that was their big onus. For myself, I decided to vote for one of the third-party candidates because I felt, yeah, both of them are moneyed interest, very clearly moneyed interest, and I didn't want to support either of that system. And some people, run me down and say, oh, well, you're why so-and-so won, you're why Trump won. Not really, I'm in California. So Hillary won here as far as that goes. But, I mean, I feel like, I'm getting very sidetracked. I apologize. I'm bumping out everywhere with this podcast. But, I don't know. I mean, let's bring this again back to the classroom. It's like, do I make laws in my classroom blocking those discussions? Blocking that use of language? in order to teach them how to appropriately act, but at the same time criminalizing their behavior for when they do it? Do I have discussions where they're allowed to use that language and then attempt to breach the topic in a way that they'll understand? Or is there some third alternative, many other alternative ways to approach the situation? I'm sure there are. There's a bunch. I don't know. It's crazy out there, and it's really a weird time to be a teacher, especially a public school teacher who feels that the current administration is largely attacking public school teachers. um, with Betsy DeVos as or DeVos, one or the other, but with her as a nominee, and she clearly dislikes public education. Where, where on this, as a teacher, does it suddenly become inappropriate for us to talk about our political leanings? I think because my personal political leaning is that public education is a good thing, which is why I became a public educator. I didn't go to the private schools. I didn't go to a charter school. I've had many offers. I've refused to go there. So, it's just an interesting struggle that we're dealing with right now. And who knows what the answer is? Who knows? I don't know. I always try to make it clear when I'm talking to kids, even about Trump, that policy-wise, I'm not necessarily discussing those issues. Sometimes, as they affect kids in my classroom, because guess what? We do have students with backgrounds in the Middle East, and they have concerns about the ban and a lot of issues like that. I've got a lot of Latino students who are worried about the effects of the wall. Heck, I've got a lot of poor white kids who are actually curious about, wait, why are we having to pay for the wall now? So, addressing those concerns, yes, I feel 100% within my bailiwick. That is something that I should be addressing. But I do try to separate the discussion of policies from the discussion of behavior, because they already have a formed opinion of Trump and his behavior and how he behaves. And when they question me about it, I say, well, in my opinion, it is inappropriate behavior. So when I see them engaging in the same behavior, I call that out. I feel like I would be a hypocrite if I called them out on their behavior, but then did not also address as concerns our president. And that's a weird spot to be in as a teacher. Where am I letting my political leanings go? No, I I don't know. I don't know. Is there a right or wrong answer right now for anything, any of it? No. That's why we're all struggling with this. But it is a weird time to be alive. It is a very, very weird time. And I don't know if my decision to move up into educational leadership will be a good thing or a bad thing in the long run. I'm very scared about that, honestly. I worry that moving up, I will succumb to a system that does a disservice for so many of our kids. And a wonderful thing for many. I can't deny that. Our education system does many wonderful things for many other children. But there is a large chunk of our students who are not cared for by this system, and in some cases are actively harmed by this system. I don't know. On a personal note, I want to thank a couple of people for encouraging me to, whether not verbally, never verbally, but just through their own actions, encouraging me to get into martial arts training again. I just today had my second Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class down at Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu. It's located downtown San Jose. It's a great place. I really recommend it. They got a kids class, and I have my son in it as well. Um, Highly recommend it. Great instructors, and just the other people in the program, going to the classes, the other students, just good people. I mean, overall, just really, really nice people. Um, but Josh Schrader, calling you out. You probably don't listen to this, but just realize, thank you very much. You've been doing martial arts for a long time, and yoga. Appreciate the yoga too. Um, as well as my friend Jimmy Brown, who's been on this podcast before. He's a big Krav Maga guy. So, I mean, that's always been encouraging. Every time I listen to him, I'm like, okay, yeah, I need to step it up. Joe Rogan podcast, as always, very, very helpful in persuading me to try new things, especially this. Um, yeah, no, I mean, it's been really exciting learning something new. And I think that's also important for adults, learning something new, and especially adults in education, because I think a lot of the times we get comfortable and we feel like we should be the masters of everything, and occasionally we need to be reminded that sometimes you're going to get your ass kicked, and you just try your best. And today, I definitely got my ass kicked. I tried my best. Um, it's helpful that I know my physical limits a little better than I did as a youth. I'm pretty sure if I had been any younger, struggling in this class, I probably would have ended up vomiting at the end just because it was just a hardcore workout. But it was super fun. If you guys haven't tried any martial arts before, I highly recommend it. Just because, not only because of the exercise, I mean, it's a great workout, but also just because of the way it gets your minds thinking about problems, technically way more technical than usual things. Is what I loved about rock climbing. Super technical. The best climbers tend to be those who are not only in control of their body, but also understand all the technique to get to where they want to go. And I know that's the truth in jiu-jitsu and other martial arts. So try it. And trust me, I mean, from all reports, people of all ages can get into jiu-jitsu. And honestly, on a completely non-serious note, but also semi-serious, I always thought, well, if there's ever a fight at school that I need to break up, jiu-jitsu will give me a number of ways to subdue students without injury and stop the fight. So that was also a secondary. I thought about Krav like Jimmy, but damn, I'm pretty sure I'm like, I don't want to run into that scenario and just take some kids out. But that's also why I started my son in on it as well, just because, he's going to be like his dad on the smaller side. And I mean, I know there's those little kids who got the Napoleon complexes, but he and I think, are more the laid back type. So occasionally you'll get picked on, and I would like him to have that ability to just calm a situation down if necessary. So we'll see how it goes. He seems to be liking it so far, and the instructors are really great. Any other news that I can think of? I'm not going to talk about it on this podcast, but thank you for tuning in. I think I might try to make some sort of intro for this at some point, so it's got a little cool intro. And if you are somebody who was trying to listen to my old episodes, I think technically, I don't even know what episode number this is. I think I'm up to like 17 or 18. Please realize that while I absolutely love making this podcast, there was about a month period where I was a little short on cash. And so my subscription for this ended. I did not have a chance to renew before my episodes were deleted. So you may not be able to find them. If I find them somewhere, or if I remember to download them somewhere, I will try to upload them again. But otherwise, I think the last 4 episodes are the ones that are saved. So, which is unfortunate. I had some really good ones. I might have to do a reintroduction to myself episode at some point for those who are new listeners, but I'm not worrying about that right now. I think on my next podcast, I know I have one planned at some point within the next 2 weeks with my history cohort again at Davis. So Yoli and Sam. I'm sure I'll manage to talk Jimmy Brown into another one at some point, and maybe if we're lucky, we can go and find Caruso if he's out there somewhere in his principal job. And there's a couple other folks that I've been talking to for a long time about doing a podcast with and have not had a chance. Finally, these podcasts might be a little shorter now. I know I've done like 2-hour ones and 3-hour. Well, okay, no, I've done like an hour and a half. I'm like trying to beef them up. I've done like hour and a half long podcasts, maybe 2-hour ones. But with the new subscription I signed up for, it's only about 45 minutes. So they might be a lot more concise, or they could be completely rambling like the one I just did. And then you're going to be confused as to why I keep talking. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you for listening. Remember, if you ever have any questions or comments or suggestions, you can email me. My email is Mr. Alberts, ALBERTS P.D @gmail.com. Take it easy.